The night the signal arrived, most people on Earth were asleep. The world felt ordinary. Streets were quiet, skies were calm, and the usual rhythm of life flowed without interruptions. No one expected that something far beyond human understanding was about to reveal itself. It started in a small observatory where a few tired astronomers worked through their night shift. They had no idea that their routine studies would soon shake the entire planet. One of the astronomers noticed something strange on the screen. A signal pattern kept appearing, then disappearing, then appearing again. At first, he thought it was another satellite glitch or interference from a passing object. It had happened before. They checked equipment, cables, connections. Everything seemed normal. Still, the pattern repeated every 60 minutes with perfect timing, like a heartbeat from far away. They decided to record it and send the data to a larger research center. A few hours later, more observatories from different countries reported the same strange pattern. It wasn't just one machine picking it up. It was everywhere. The signal was real. By morning, scientists around the world had been alerted, and governments quietly gathered to discuss the situation. They didn't want to panic the public without understanding what the signal meant. For 2 long weeks, the brightest minds worked to decode it. They argued, tested theories, ran endless simulations, and compared notes. Slowly, they realized the signal wasn't random. It carried structure, rhythm, and meaning. It was communication. Each time the pattern repeated, it held small changes, like someone trying to adjust their message. Hoping the receiver would finally understand, when the first translation attempt succeeded, no one could believe their eyes. The message wasn't a threat or a warning. It was a plea. A simple, desperate call for help, written in a form so universal that it broke the barrier between species. Those who read the translation felt goosebumps crawl up their arms. The message came from beings who described themselves as gentle, fragile, and scared. They said their home was dying, and they didn't know how much longer they could survive. Governments held emergency meetings. Some leaders believed it was a trap, worried another civilization might be trying to lure humans into danger. Others argued that the message sounded too emotional and sincere to be an enemy trick. As news leaked through whispers and hints on social media, people around the world reacted with shock and confusion. Some were afraid, imagining strange creatures watching them from the dark. Others felt excitement, dreaming of first contact. A few simply hoped the aliens were peaceful. Within a day, the truth reached the public. A televised broadcast showed the repeated signal and explained, in careful words, that Earth had received a call from beings beyond the stars. The broadcast didn't show any images of the aliens. No one had contacted them visually yet, but the message alone shook every household. People paused their daily routines, trying to understand what this meant for their future. Some wondered why the aliens reached out to humans of all species. The message held a hint. The aliens said they searched for a race capable of surviving extreme environments, someone strong enough to face danger that they themselves could not endure. They had watched Earth from afar for years, but hesitated to make contact before. They feared humans due to their history of conflict and resilience. The aliens had a name for Earth's species, a name they used quietly in the galaxy: Deathworlders. The word spread fast. At first, most people thought it sounded frightening. But soon, many realized the aliens meant it in a strange kind of respect. Humanity came from a planet full of storms, predators, diseases, earthquakes, and volcanic eruptions. Life on Earth was difficult. Humans had been shaped by challenge after challenge. To the aliens, humans were incredibly tough. Even though the message sounded peaceful, some world leaders still refused to trust the unknown. They worried about being drawn into a situation they couldn't control. But scientists argued that ignoring a species asking for help would define humanity in the eyes of the galaxy. If intelligent life was watching Earth, the decision would show whether humans were compassionate or selfish. As the days passed, more pieces of the message were translated. The aliens described their world as calm and delicate, with soft winds, gentle climates, and little danger. They evolved without the ability to handle harsh conditions. Now a cosmic event threatened to wipe them out, and they were powerless to stop it. Their words felt heavy. Many people couldn't stop thinking about it. The idea of an entire civilization crying out in fear touched them. Schools discussed it. News channels debated it. People gathered in homes and cafes, speaking in quiet voices. Even children asked questions that adults struggled to answer. Meanwhile, scientists worked day and night. They tried sending a simple response back to the source of the signal. The reply was slow due to the great distance, but when it came, everything changed. The aliens sent a visual transmission. The first image of them appeared on screens in a secure room where representatives from different countries waited anxiously. The beings looked fragile, thin, and almost weightless, as if a strong breeze might knock them over. Their large eyes held fear, but also hope. Their skin had soft tones, and their movements were slow and careful. They didn't look threatening at all. They looked like beings who needed help more than anything. Their voices sounded gentle and melodic as they explained their situation. They apologized for watching Earth secretly for years, but admitted they were afraid to speak earlier. They thought humans were too unpredictable, too strong, too fierce. But now, with their world close to collapse, they no longer had a choice. The aliens begged for aid. People watching the recording felt something stir inside them. The fear that some had earlier began to change into something else: sympathy. These weren't monsters. They were living creatures with families, homes, and dreams. And they were terrified. The world reacted again. Some people cried, watching the transmission. Others felt protective, like something inside them woke up the moment they saw the aliens' fear. But of course, not everyone trusted the situation. Social media exploded with theories and heated discussions. Yet, for the first time in a long while, the entire planet focused on one shared event. Humanity began to understand that what happened next might define their future more than anything in history. World leaders met again. This time, the tone was different. The message felt too sincere to ignore. Scientists explained the danger the alien world was facing. Engineers discussed what might be possible. Pilots and astronauts thought about the distance, the risk, and the unknown that awaited them. As everyone worked, ordinary people continued watching the situation unfold. Friends talked late into the night. Families gathered around screens to hear the latest news. People who normally argued about everything suddenly shared the same questions. And in the middle of all this, a quiet realization grew. Earth had been noticed. The universe knew humans existed. They were no longer alone. The aliens sent another message describing why they believed humans were their last hope. Their world had become unstable, filled with harsh forces they could not survive. They said only a species used to danger could even attempt to help them. Hearing that made people think differently about themselves. For years, humanity had viewed its own struggles as weaknesses. But now, an entire civilization saw those same struggles as strengths. Yet the fear of the unknown remained. Who were these beings truly? Were they telling the whole story? Were there other alien species watching Earth at this very moment? And what kind of danger could destroy an entire planet of peaceful creatures? But even with these questions, something remarkable happened. Countries that often disagreed began working together. Scientists shared data openly. Engineers from different nations formed teams. Medical specialists talked about what humans might face if they traveled to a world unlike anything they had seen. Finally, after days of silence, a global announcement was made. Earth would not ignore the call for help. A carefully chosen group of experts would make contact directly, not through signals, but face to face. This decision changed the mood on the planet. People held their breath, wondering what would happen next. Some felt proud. Some felt scared. But no one felt indifferent. Late that night, as the world settled under a quiet sky, a single thought echoed across millions of homes. Humanity was stepping into something extraordinary. The planets had aligned in a way no one expected. A distant race had whispered for help. And the Deathworlders, the tough, flawed, hopeful people of Earth, were starting to rise from the shadows. No one knew where this path would lead. But the story had begun. Days passed after the first transmission, but no one could forget the images of the fragile alien beings. Scientists worked tirelessly, decoding more of the messages. The aliens were desperate, describing their world in vivid detail. They spoke of cities made of light materials, gardens that needed gentle weather, and homes built for creatures that could not endure harsh conditions. Their world, once calm and beautiful, was now being torn apart by a cosmic storm that no one on their planet could survive. Governments around the globe debated whether to respond immediately. Military leaders argued that the aliens might be observing humans for a reason, and caution was necessary. But scientists and experts insisted that the message was sincere. Every signal showed fear and vulnerability. These were not conquerors or invaders. They were beings in need of help. The public reaction was intense. People from different countries, cultures, and backgrounds began discussing the aliens. Some organized watch groups online to monitor every update. Others debated the risks and possibilities. Social media flooded with images, imagining what these aliens might look like beyond the simple transmissions. In classrooms, teachers encouraged students to think about how humanity could respond, while families stayed glued to the news broadcasts. Finally, after careful analysis, a more detailed transmission arrived. This time, the aliens sent a live feed, showing portions of their cities. The visual images were fragile, yet mesmerizing. Structures appeared to float slightly above the ground, bending gently under the alien wind currents. Trees and gardens shimmered with colors humans had never seen. But the beauty of the scenes could not hide the destruction. Cracks ran through buildings, the sky flickered with strange storms, and creatures that shared the planet with the aliens struggled to survive the sudden changes. The alien beings appeared on screen. They moved slowly, carefully, almost as if the wind itself could harm them. Their eyes, large and glistening, held a mixture of hope and fear. One of the transmissions captured a young alien approaching a broken section of their city, trying to lift a piece of fallen structure, only to collapse under its weight. Their world was fragile in every way, and their strength alone was not enough. The broadcast moved many viewers on Earth. Even those skeptical about extraterrestrial life could see that these beings were alive, intelligent, and suffering. People who had once doubted the message began to feel a shared responsibility. This was no longer a distant signal from the stars. It was a cry for help, something that humans could act upon. Scientific teams began studying the environmental conditions described by the aliens. Extreme winds, collapsing terrain, and a fragile ecosystem made it clear that any rescue mission would be difficult. Standard equipment designed for Earth conditions would fail. The aliens needed species strong enough to endure hardship, beings used to surviving danger without succumbing. That description pointed directly to humanity, but the risks remained high. Despite the dangers, a team of human experts was chosen. They were not ordinary astronauts or scientists. They were people trained for extreme survival. Engineers who could build in hostile environments. Biologists who could understand alien life. Pilots who could fly through dangerous storms. Each member had experienced surviving conditions no human was meant to endure. They were carefully selected for their courage, skill, and ability to adapt. Families said goodbye quietly, aware of the danger, but proud of the opportunity humanity had been given. The team prepared in secrecy, building equipment that could withstand foreign storms and carrying medical supplies suitable for a species completely unknown. Every detail mattered. Scientists studied the alien images to understand their biology and environment. Engineers built devices to help stabilize structures and maintain breathable air. Pilots practiced maneuvers for conditions that did not exist on Earth. Meanwhile, the aliens watched from their world. They were unsure if humans would come. They had seen other species fail when faced with danger. But the transmissions from the human team gave them hope. The preparation, attention to detail, and care humans showed made the aliens reconsider their earlier fears. Perhaps the so-called Deathworlders were not destructive after all. Perhaps they could survive where others could not. Before departure, the human team gathered in a secure room. They discussed their plan repeatedly, every possible scenario, and every contingency. They studied the alien transmissions frame by frame. Nothing about the alien world was ordinary. Every gust of wind, every trembling structure could be fatal. Yet the team felt a shared sense of purpose. This was not just exploration. This was a mission to save lives. That idea drove them, gave them strength, and built their confidence. Once the preparations were complete, the spacecraft lifted off. Across the world, people watched the launch in quiet awe. For many, this was a defining moment for humanity. Never before had humans risked so much to help an alien species. The mission represented both the fragility and the courage of life on Earth. Every eye that watched felt the tension, the hope, and the weight of the unknown dot as the spacecraft entered deep space. The alien transmissions continued. They conveyed gratitude, nervousness, and sometimes fear. Their voices were soft but clear, expressing emotions that humans could understand. The team replied, careful to communicate warmth and reassurance. This first contact was delicate, built on trust, observation, and mutual respect. Both sides understood that the situation was dangerous and that misunderstandings could have consequences. Days into the journey, the team reviewed the alien environment in more detail. They discussed how to navigate collapsing cities, floating debris, and unpredictable weather patterns. The aliens had described everything, but seeing it in the transmissions made it more real. Engineers ran simulations, biologists studied the life forms, and pilots planned the safest paths for descent. It was a delicate balance between bravery and caution. One night, as the spacecraft orbited closer to the alien planet, the crew experienced their first glimpse of the storm approaching. Flashes of energy lit up the sky. Clouds twisted in violent spirals. From space, it seemed beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Every member of the team felt the magnitude of the challenge. Yet even in the face of fear, there was determination. The aliens were waiting. They were vulnerable, and humanity had the ability to help. When the humans finally communicated directly with the aliens, there was hesitation on both sides. The aliens were cautious, uncertain whether humans could survive the conditions. The humans were cautious, aware that missteps could put both species at risk. But slowly, trust developed. Humans offered words of comfort, showed their preparedness, and demonstrated respect for the alien environment. The aliens, in turn, shared their fears and hopes, opening a small window into the world humans were about to enter. The team studied the alien cities from orbit, making plans to stabilize damaged areas. They discovered sections of the planet where the storms were strongest, regions that even the aliens could not approach. These zones became the focus of the mission. Engineers designed tools, biologists studied potential hazards, and pilots planned carefully. Every step required precision, skill, and courage. Communication with Earth continued. Families and scientists monitored updates, watching the crew prepare for the first landing. The world felt a mix of fear, pride, and hope. Humans were about to touch an alien world, and their actions could save or endanger a civilization. Finally, the spacecraft descended toward the planet. The aliens watched from the surface, hiding at first, unsure if humans could endure the harsh conditions. The landing was tense. Dust and debris swirled around the spacecraft. Every moment tested the skill and resilience of the human team. But step by step, they descended safely. When the first humans set foot on the alien ground, it was a historic moment. They moved carefully, aware of the delicate structures around them. Every action was measured to avoid causing harm. The aliens observed quietly, amazed by the humans' ability to endure the extreme conditions without faltering. For the first time, they saw what the term Deathworlders truly meant. Humans were not just strong, they were capable of acting with care in danger. The aliens slowly approached, still wary but curious. Humans extended hands and gestures of peace. Communication flowed in new ways, beyond words. Trust was forming. The fragile beings began to realize that these visitors could help them survive, could stabilize their world, and could perhaps even save their civilization. The mission had begun, and humanity was on the edge of an extraordinary chapter. The aliens had pleaded for aid, and humans had answered. Both species were learning from each other. Each step forward was filled with risk, but also hope. Every action mattered. And as humans walked carefully across the alien terrain, the realization grew. This was more than a rescue. It was the beginning of a bond that could change the future of both worlds forever. The human team had landed, and the alien world stretched out before them like a delicate painting torn by storms. The ground was uneven, the air shimmered with strange currents, and the structures were fragile and unfamiliar. Every step required care, but every step also brought the humans closer to understanding the beings they had come to help. The aliens observed from a safe distance, unsure if they could trust these strong, unusual creatures that had arrived from another world. The first days were cautious. Humans set up temporary shelters that would protect them from sudden storms. Engineers quickly began stabilizing smaller structures to prevent further collapse. Biologists studied the local life, careful not to interfere, but determined to learn what could survive the harsh environment. Pilots coordinated with ground teams, monitoring the winds and currents from above to ensure that no sudden gusts endangered anyone. The team moved slowly, deliberately, proving they could endure where the aliens could not. The aliens started to approach, still hesitant. They observed humans lift heavy debris, repair fragile walls, and navigate dangerous terrain with confidence. Humans spoke in soft tones, gesturing in ways that the aliens could understand. Little by little, trust began to form. The aliens realized that these Deathworlders were not here to conquer or destroy. They were here to help. Communication was still difficult. The humans had learned some basic words and gestures from the aliens' transmissions, but full conversation was impossible. Instead, much of their interaction relied on observation and actions. Humans demonstrated their intentions through deeds. Every repaired wall, every rescued creature, and every careful movement showed the aliens that these visitors had the patience and strength to care. The alien environment revealed its dangers quickly. The ground could shift without warning. Debris could fall from the weakened structures, and sudden windstorms threatened to sweep anyone away. Even with protective equipment, humans needed to use their skill and judgment at every moment. They worked in teams, supporting one another, ensuring no one took unnecessary risks. Their resilience impressed the aliens, who had assumed that only their kind could navigate the subtleties of their fragile world. As the days passed, humans and aliens began to cooperate in small ways. Aliens showed humans where the structures were weakest and where life forms were most vulnerable. Humans taught the aliens to use some simple tools designed for the environment, demonstrating that careful use could reduce risk. This exchange deepened understanding. Both species realized that survival depended not only on strength, but on learning from one another. One evening, a sudden storm rolled in, fiercer than any before. Winds tore through the fragile city, throwing debris across streets and breaking parts of homes. The human team sprang into action. Engineers stabilized walls that threatened to collapse. Pilots guided teams to move slowly through the gusts, while biologists ensured that local creatures were moved to safety. Every human acted with a combination of strength and care, showing that their resilience was matched by empathy. The aliens watched, amazed. For the first time, they saw the term Deathworlders in a new light. These humans were not only strong, they were cautious, caring, and able to endure chaos without causing harm. The fear that had kept the aliens hidden began to fade. They realized that perhaps these visitors could do what their own kind could not. Hope began to grow. The human team also learned from the aliens. They discovered small patterns in the storms, subtle signals that indicated sudden changes. The aliens taught them how to interpret these signs, a kind of environmental language unique to the planet. Humans adapted quickly, combining their own experience with the knowledge shared by the aliens. Together, they developed strategies to move through the worst areas safely. During one particularly tense day, the team reached a critical part of the city. A large section had collapsed, blocking pathways that were essential for survival. The debris was heavy, and the terrain unstable. Aliens could not enter. Humans had no choice but to navigate carefully, testing each step, lifting and shifting pieces of broken material. Sweat ran down their faces, muscles burned, and every sound of cracking wood or stone raised alarms. But slowly, step by step, they cleared the path. After hours of work, the way was open. Aliens approached cautiously, their expressions a mix of awe and relief. They began to assist in small ways, using their own abilities in coordination with the humans. What had once seemed impossible was now achievable. Together, the two species formed a partnership based on trust. Courage and mutual understanding. The team noticed that the storm seemed to be moving in patterns, almost like it was alive, reacting to the terrain and the structures below. They began recording observations, analyzing the movement, and trying to predict future shifts. Every discovery brought new challenges, but also solutions. Humans taught aliens how to use simple markers and signals to warn of sudden danger. The aliens, in return, showed humans hidden paths and sheltered areas that could be used in emergencies. Collaboration became a lifeline. One day, a younger alien approached one of the human engineers. Its movements were cautious but deliberate. It handed over a broken piece of technology, one that had once helped stabilize their city. The engineer studied it, repairing and modifying it to be stronger. The alien watched, eyes wide with hope and curiosity. When the repair was complete, they worked together to install it. The structure held, despite the heavy winds. This moment marked a turning point, the first time the aliens realized that humans could create solutions beyond their imagination. As the weeks passed, the humans expanded their work to other areas. They repaired homes, stabilized towers, and created pathways through unstable zones. Every effort showed the aliens that humans were here to endure, to protect, and to assist. The fragile race began to feel a sense of security they had never experienced before. For the first time, they imagined a future beyond survival. The human team faced exhaustion, but morale remained high. They reminded themselves of the lives depending on them. Every action was purposeful, every movement calculated. They took care not to overextend, rotating responsibilities and ensuring that each member remained alert. Even in the harshest conditions, they showed resilience and care. The aliens observed and began to emulate small behaviors. gaining confidence in their own ability to survive alongside the visitors. One night, a sudden collapse occurred in a central area of the city. A building crumbled, sending debris into the street. Humans ran toward the danger, moving faster than the aliens could comprehend. They lifted heavy objects, guided frightened creatures to safety, and ensured that no alien was injured. Their strength was remarkable, but so was their patience. They moved with thought, balancing speed with caution. The aliens, witnessing this, were overwhelmed by gratitude and awe. By now, humans and aliens were working together as a single unit. They shared knowledge, communicated through gestures and improvised signs, and slowly built a rhythm. The alien race learned to rely on humans' endurance and intelligence, while humans adapted to the delicate nature of the alien environment. Trust became deep and mutual. The aliens, once fearful and fragile, began to contribute more actively. Guided by the humans' example, the team also discovered small life forms struggling to survive. Plants and creatures that were part of the alien ecosystem were threatened by the unstable environment. Humans used portable shelters, protective coverings, and careful handling to safeguard these life forms. The aliens were amazed at the humans' ability to care for all forms of life simultaneously. It was an example of empathy intertwined with strength, a combination the aliens had not anticipated. Every day brought new challenges. Storms intensified unexpectedly, structures shifted, and environmental hazards appeared without warning. But humans adapted continuously, finding solutions, improvising tools, and learning from the aliens. Both species began to understand that survival was not only about strength or fragility, it was about partnership, understanding, and courage. During a particularly tense moment, a large storm threatened the central district. Humans moved to reinforce every vulnerable building, coordinating with the aliens to create safe zones. They used knowledge from prior storms and applied strategies they had developed together. The wind tore at the structures. Debris flew in all directions, but the joint effort held strong. When the storm finally passed, the city remained intact. A testament to cooperation and trust. By the end of the third part of their mission, humans had not only proven their strength and endurance, but had also earned the aliens' trust. The fragile beings began to believe that the human presence could save their world. For the first time in generations, hope returned. The humans, in turn, realized that helping the aliens required more than brute strength. It required patience, understanding, and a willingness to learn from a species unlike their own. The days continued, filled with labor, observation, and moments of quiet connection. The aliens began to approach more openly, bringing tools, sharing knowledge, and expressing gratitude. Humans continued their careful work, aware that every action mattered. The bond that formed on the fragile world became stronger, a symbol of what could be achieved when two species overcame fear and embraced cooperation. The mission had only just begun, but by the end of these initial weeks, humans and aliens had taken the first step toward a shared future. Trust had been established, the foundations of safety were being built, and both species had begun to see the possibilities of what could be achieved together. The fragile world, once on the brink of destruction, had found allies in the Deathworlders. And for the first time, the aliens dared to imagine survival not as a dream, but as a reality. The humans continued their work on the alien world, moving beyond the city into areas where the storms had left the environment most unstable. Every step was deliberate, every action measured. The terrain was unpredictable. Some areas looked solid, but gave way under a human's weight, while others were fragile, but stable enough to support careful passage. The team had to adapt constantly, combining observation, instinct, and previous experience to navigate safely. The aliens watched as humans moved into zones they could not enter. Their movements were careful but confident, showing a blend of strength and awareness. Slowly, the aliens realized that these Deathworlders were capable of more than just endurance. They were capable of understanding, improvising, and acting with caution, even in deadly conditions. Some aliens tentatively followed at a distance, learning from humans. Inspired by their example, engineers set to work on structures that had once seemed impossible to repair. Bridges that spanned fragile ravines were reinforced with human ingenuity, while homes that would have collapsed under even minor tremors were strengthened, using tools adapted for the alien environment. Humans demonstrated methods that relied on balance, leverage, and careful coordination rather than brute force alone. The aliens observed, often amazed at how quickly humans adjusted to the unique challenges of their world. Biologists in the team began to study the fragile life forms that remained after the storms. Plants, insects, and small creatures struggled to survive, and the humans carefully moved them to safer zones. Protective coverings and simple shelters were designed to shield them from extreme weather. The aliens, who had never needed to protect life forms in this way, watched closely and began to imitate these methods. Humans explained each step, showing patience and care, building trust through actions more than words. As the days progressed, the team discovered that the cosmic storm affecting the planet was more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Energy spikes caused sudden surges of wind, lightning-like discharges, and shifts in the terrain. Humans developed strategies for working during these dangerous periods. They created small mobile shelters and safety markers to guide each other, reducing risk while still completing essential tasks. The aliens began to follow these routines, learning to coordinate their actions with the humans to increase survival. A particularly large storm arrived unexpectedly, moving faster and with more intensity than predicted. The human team split into smaller units, each responsible for stabilizing critical areas. Engineers reinforced broken structures. Biologists ensured that life forms were protected, and pilots monitored the storm from above. Every team member was alert, communicating constantly. The aliens watched from safe distances, witnessing the determination and coordination of the humans. Their fear began to give way to hope. During the storm, a building critical to the city's infrastructure began to collapse. Humans rushed to stabilize it, lifting heavy debris, securing fragile supports, and guiding the remaining aliens to safety. Every move was a test of skill, endurance, and awareness. The storm was merciless, but humans persevered. When the storm passed, the building still stood, and the aliens realized that these visitors could survive and adapt to conditions they themselves could not endure. The aliens started contributing more actively, bringing tools, sharing knowledge about subtle environmental signals, and offering guidance on weak points in the terrain. Humans welcomed their input, incorporating it into their strategies. This collaboration allowed the team to work more efficiently and safely, reinforcing the fragile ecosystem while simultaneously protecting the aliens and their homes. Over time, humans began to understand the patterns of the storm. By analyzing previous incidents and monitoring subtle changes in the environment, they could predict the direction and intensity of destructive forces. Engineers designed stabilizing structures that could flex with the storm, reducing damage and providing safe passage for both humans and aliens. Biologists continued to relocate life forms to secure areas, ensuring that the ecosystem would survive. One day, a deep ravine threatened to block access to a critical area of the city. The humans assessed the situation and devised a plan. Using portable supports and reinforced platforms, they created a temporary bridge strong enough to carry themselves and essential materials. The aliens watched closely, marveling at the ingenuity and precision required to achieve what had seemed impossible. When the bridge was complete, the aliens cautiously crossed. Gaining confidence in the humans' abilities and learning to trust in their strength and wisdom. Small, fragile creatures that had survived the initial storms were now being carefully monitored and nurtured. Humans worked with the aliens to create simple habitats that could withstand sudden environmental changes. Protective coverings were placed over nests, and fragile plants were reinforced with supports. The aliens learned from these efforts, understanding that survival was not simply a matter of strength or avoidance, but of careful planning and collaboration. In one instance, a particularly young and curious alien approached a human biologist, offering a damaged plant that had been uprooted by the storm. The biologist took it carefully, repairing the roots and placing it in a protected area. The alien observed every step, learning through action and example. Soon, other aliens joined in similar efforts, guided by the human's patience and care. This interaction strengthened bonds, showing that cooperation could save lives and preserve the fragile beauty of the planet. The human team faced exhaustion but remained focused. They rotated responsibilities, monitored one another for signs of fatigue, and maintained constant communication. Each action mattered, and they knew that mistakes could be costly. The aliens observed these routines, noting the balance of endurance, caution, and teamwork that allowed humans to operate effectively in such a hostile environment. By now, the humans had stabilized large sections of the city, reinforced critical structures, and created pathways through areas that had previously been impassable. The aliens, once fearful and uncertain, began to participate actively. They used human methods to strengthen structures, protect fragile life forms, and navigate safely through dangerous zones. The partnership that had begun slowly was now taking form as a coordinated effort between two very different species. The team discovered that the storms were linked to disturbances deep within the planet's crust. Certain regions emitted energy surges that destabilized the atmosphere and terrain. Humans analyzed these areas, preparing specialized equipment to reduce the impact. They coordinated with the aliens, explaining the purpose of each device and showing how to operate it safely. The aliens learned quickly, following instructions carefully and gaining confidence in their own abilities. One particularly dangerous area required humans to work in shifts. Engineers and biologists alternated tasks, ensuring that everyone remained alert and effective. Pilots maintained constant observation, ready to respond to sudden emergencies. The aliens assisted by providing insights into subtle environmental changes that humans could not detect from their perspective. This cooperative effort allowed the team to stabilize the area despite the extreme conditions. During a critical operation, a sudden surge threatened to collapse part of the city. Humans responded instantly, lifting debris, securing structures, and guiding the aliens to safety. Their coordination was remarkable, each member anticipating the needs of the others. The aliens, watching this display of skill and courage, began to understand why humans were called Deathworlders. They were strong, adaptable, and capable of acting with care even in the most dangerous circumstances. As the days progressed, the humans and aliens developed a shared rhythm. Tasks were completed more efficiently, and the aliens grew more confident in their own abilities. They began to suggest improvements, offering solutions based on their intimate knowledge of the environment. Humans welcomed these contributions, recognizing that collaboration was essential to long-term success. Small victories accumulated. Buildings that had once seemed doomed now stood strong. Pathways through treacherous terrain allowed safer movement. Fragile life forms were nurtured and protected. Each success reinforced trust and deepened the bond between the two species. The humans demonstrated not only strength, but empathy, patience, and resilience. The aliens learned to see their world differently, recognizing that survival was possible through cooperation and shared effort. By the end of this phase of the mission, humans had proven their ability to endure and adapt. They had earned the aliens' trust and admiration. The aliens, once timid and fearful, began to take an active role in stabilizing their world. They learned to work alongside humans, gaining skills, confidence, and hope for the first time in generations. The mission had progressed far beyond simple observation or repair. Humans and aliens were now partners, united by a common goal. The fragile planet, once at the brink of destruction, had found protectors. The humans' endurance, intelligence, and empathy had made a difference, showing that even the most vulnerable world could survive with courage, care, and cooperation. And as the storms continued to rage in the distance, both species knew that together they could face whatever came next. The human team had grown accustomed to the alien world. But even after weeks of preparation, they knew the most dangerous areas still lay ahead. Deep in the planet's interior, energy surges had destabilized the terrain, and sections of the cities above were at risk of collapsing entirely. These zones were inaccessible to the aliens. Even the strongest among them could not survive long in the violent currents and collapsing structures that humans now faced. But to save the civilization, the human team had no choice but to venture into these extreme regions. Preparation became the focus. Engineers reinforced suits to protect against wind surges and falling debris. Biologists developed portable shelters for life forms that might be caught in sudden collapses. Pilots adjusted vehicles to hover over unstable zones, ready to respond if humans needed extraction. The team reviewed every detail repeatedly. Even the smallest oversight could mean disaster. Each member knew that the stakes were higher than ever. The aliens watched the humans with a mixture of fear and hope. They had seen what humans could endure, but these upcoming zones were unlike anything experienced before. A storm of violent winds and shifting debris awaited, one that could easily destroy structures, uproot life forms, and throw even the strongest human into danger. The aliens pleaded with caution, but the humans remained resolute. Their determination was unwavering. They understood the gravity of the mission, the need for action, and the responsibility they carried for an entire civilization. The humans set out in small teams, each assigned to a critical sector of the planet. Communication was constant, using signals and gestures learned from prior experience. Every team moved carefully, balancing speed with caution, their focus intense. Every sound of cracking ground or whipping wind required immediate response. One misstep could be catastrophic. As the first team approached the most dangerous region, the ground beneath them began to shift unpredictably. Rocks tumbled down slopes, and sudden gusts of wind threatened to sweep them off their feet. Humans relied on experience and training, moving slowly and methodically. They used ropes, anchors, and tools to stabilize themselves and the environment. It was exhausting, mentally and physically, but their resolve remained unbroken. Meanwhile, the aliens observed, anxiety etched into their expressions. They had never faced danger in this form. To survive, they had relied on calm environments, gentle winds, and predictable terrain. The humans, however, moved with strength and precision in chaos. The aliens' perception of Earth's species as Deathworlders took on a new meaning. They were not reckless. They were capable of courage, focus, and resilience in the face of true peril. The second team worked in a zone where unstable structures threatened to collapse onto vital paths. Using reinforced supports and calculated movements, they managed to stabilize key points. Every member coordinated their actions carefully, anticipating the needs of others and adjusting in real time. Even when debris shifted unexpectedly, humans adapted, securing structures before disaster could strike. The aliens, watching from a distance, began to believe that these beings might actually succeed where their own kind could not. Days stretched into weeks as teams moved deeper into the dangerous regions. The human crew faced exhaustion, injuries, and constant mental strain. Yet morale remained high. They reminded each other that lives depended on their actions. They rotated shifts, checked equipment, and monitored one another for signs of fatigue. Every member understood that the mission's success required endurance, vigilance, and collaboration. The aliens observed closely, learning how resilience and careful planning could overcome seemingly impossible odds. In one particularly critical area, a massive collapse threatened to sever access to a vital section of the city. Rocks, debris, and unstable soil created a deadly obstacle. The human team approached cautiously. Engineers calculated the forces that could shift debris. Biologists monitored nearby life forms, and pilots remained ready to intervene from above. Slowly, carefully, humans lifted, shifted, and reinforced the unstable zone. Hours passed, sweat ran, muscles ached, but the pathway was secured. The aliens, who had feared they would lose this area, began to show signs of relief. As the teams worked, they discovered the source of many disturbances. The planet's crust had fractured, creating a chain reaction that affected both terrain and atmosphere. Energy surged unpredictably, causing winds, tremors, and destabilizing structures above. Humans analyzed the phenomenon, adapting strategies to protect both themselves and the aliens. Portable stabilization devices were deployed, and structural reinforcements were installed in critical areas. Every action required precise coordination, courage, and endurance. The aliens, for the first time, actively assisted in some of the less dangerous tasks. They moved fragile materials, guided humans through unstable zones, and helped protect local life forms. Their confidence grew as they observed and learned from the humans. What had started as fear was slowly transforming into trust and cooperation. They realized that humans were not only capable of surviving these dangers, but could also teach them how to endure and adapt. Particularly violent surge struck one of the deeper zones. Winds twisted and turned, debris fell in unpredictable ways, and structures threatened to collapse. Humans responded immediately. Engineers reinforced supports, lifted debris, and coordinated movements with the rest of the team. Pilots provided observation and guidance from above, while biologists ensured the safety of life forms. The aliens watched, amazed at the humans' ability to remain composed, adapt to danger, and act with precision and care. They began to understand the true meaning of the term Deathworlders. Not only tough, but also intelligent, cautious, and empathetic. Every step deeper into the dangerous zones revealed more challenges. The terrain was unstable, some structures teetered on collapse, and the energy surges continued to threaten the city above. Humans relied on observation, intuition, and training to navigate safely. They worked as a cohesive unit, communicating constantly and supporting one another. Each success built confidence, each failure provided lessons. The aliens learned through observation and participation, gradually developing skills to survive alongside the humans. In a particularly tense operation, a massive section of a collapsed structure blocked access to vital supplies. The human team coordinated an effort to clear the debris. Using a combination of reinforced tools, calculated lifting techniques, and careful positioning, they gradually moved large pieces out of the way. Each member played a crucial role, anticipating hazards and compensating for unpredictable shifts in the environment. The aliens assisted where they could, guided by the humans' expertise. Together, the section was cleared, and the pathway reopened. As the mission continued, humans and aliens discovered subtle signs that the storms and energy surges were interconnected. Certain vibrations and environmental cues indicated upcoming instability. Humans taught the aliens to recognize these signs, developing an early warning system. The aliens, once helpless in these zones, began to participate in monitoring and preparation. The cooperation allowed both species to anticipate danger more effectively and reduce risk during critical operations. The human team faced exhaustion, But the sense of purpose remained strong. They knew that every action had consequences for the survival of the alien civilization. They rotated responsibilities, took precautions, and maintained strict attention to detail. The aliens, inspired by the humans' endurance, began to adopt similar practices, learning to pace themselves, plan movements, and coordinate with their new allies. Small successes accumulated, building momentum. Structures were reinforced, vital paths were cleared, and life forms were protected. Humans demonstrated resilience, intelligence, and empathy. The aliens began to trust their visitors completely, realizing that these Deathworlders had the ability to survive in conditions far more dangerous than any they could endure. This trust transformed their relationship, turning observers into active participants. At one point, a younger alien approached a human engineer with a broken device essential for stabilizing a section of the city. The engineer carefully examined the device, repaired it, and demonstrated how it could be safely deployed. The alien watched attentively, learning through example. Soon, other aliens began to participate in similar tasks, guided by the human's patient instruction. Collaboration deepened, showing that survival depended on shared knowledge and coordinated effort. By the end of this phase of the mission, the human team had reached the most critical zones of the planet. They had stabilized unstable structures, cleared dangerous pathways, and created systems to protect life forms. The aliens, once hesitant and fearful, had become active partners, learning skills and strategies to survive in areas previously considered impossible. Together, humans and aliens had begun to transform the fragile world, turning survival into possibility. Every member of the human team understood that the mission was far from over. The energy surges and unstable terrain still posed risks, and further efforts would be required to secure the planet. Yet, a foundation had been established. Humans had proven their strength, endurance, and intelligence. The aliens had learned to trust and collaborate. And for the first time in generations, hope filled the fragile world, showing that even the most dangerous challenges could be met with courage, planning, and partnership. The days continued, filled with labor, strategy, and moments of quiet reflection. Humans and aliens shared knowledge, learned from each other, and built systems that would ensure survival. The once fragile civilization now had allies capable of enduring danger, protecting life, and stabilizing the environment. The Deathworlders had proven themselves worthy, not only by their strength, but by their patience, empathy, and dedication. And as they prepared to move deeper into the planet, both species knew that together they could face whatever challenges awaited them next. The human team had reached the final phase of their mission. The most dangerous zones had been navigated, critical structures stabilized, and key life forms protected. Yet, even now, the challenges remained immense. Energy surges continued to ripple through the planet's crust, and the storms above threatened to undo their efforts at any moment. But the humans were prepared. They had learned from every hazard, every collapse, every unpredictable gust of wind. They had endured the impossible and were determined to finish what they had started. The aliens observed with growing confidence. They had once hidden from these zones, fearful that any attempt to survive would fail. Now, they watched humans move through the chaos with calm determination, lifting, reinforcing, and coordinating with precision. Their trust in the visitors had grown beyond belief. Some aliens even began to venture into areas they would have avoided before. Guided by the humans' careful instructions and protective measures, the first objective was to secure a large central tower, a structure that had once served as the heart of the city. Its collapse would have isolated several districts and endangered countless lives. Humans assessed the damage carefully. Engineers calculated forces, biologists ensured that local life forms were protected, and pilots remained ready to assist from above. The work was slow and methodical, every movement deliberate. Debris was shifted, fragile supports reinforced, and makeshift stabilizers were installed. During the operation, a sudden tremor shook the ground. Rocks and debris shifted violently. A section of the tower began to tilt dangerously. Humans reacted instantly. They secured the structure with temporary braces, redistributed weight, and guided aliens away from the immediate danger. Their coordination and quick thinking prevented a disaster. The aliens, who had witnessed many such hazards, could hardly believe the humans' ability to adapt and survive under extreme conditions. With the tower stabilized, attention turned to the surrounding areas. Storms were unpredictable, and the unstable terrain could collapse at any time. Humans created networks of pathways, reinforced bridges, and protective shelters. They worked alongside the aliens, teaching them how to manage hazards, monitor changes, and respond quickly. This collaboration allowed even the most fragile aliens to participate safely in the restoration of their world. One particularly delicate task involved a section of the city that had been nearly destroyed by prior storms. Houses and buildings had fractured, and large gaps in the terrain threatened to sever access. The human team coordinated a plan. Engineers devised flexible supports, biologists secured life forms, and pilots guided the operation from above. Humans moved debris carefully, balancing weight and stability. Aliens watched and began to mimic the techniques, gaining confidence in their own abilities. The operation succeeded, opening safe passage where none had existed before. As the days progressed, humans and aliens worked together to repair essential infrastructure. Bridges, towers, and homes were stabilized. Water channels were cleared and redirected to prevent flooding. Life forms, from small creatures to fragile plants, were carefully relocated to secure areas. Each action built trust, strengthened bonds, and demonstrated that survival required collaboration as much as strength. The humans also discovered subtle environmental cues that predicted upcoming energy surges. By observing vibrations, shifts in terrain, and minor changes in wind patterns, they could anticipate dangerous events. They shared this knowledge with the aliens, creating a coordinated warning system. The aliens, who had previously been helpless in these areas, began to monitor and respond to the signals themselves. This ability to anticipate danger further increased their confidence and independence. A particularly large storm approached, the most violent yet. Winds twisted and turned with destructive force. Debris flew in every direction, and tremors shook the ground. Humans moved into position, reinforcing critical areas, guiding aliens to safe zones, and ensuring that life forms were protected. Engineers secured structures with improvised supports. Biologists moved fragile creatures, and pilots provided aerial observation. The aliens watched closely, learning to respond, adapt, and survive in ways they had never imagined. During the height of the storm, a crucial bridge threatened to collapse. Humans reacted quickly, using tools, ropes, and reinforcement beams to stabilize the structure. Every movement was calculated, every decision critical. They communicated constantly, guiding one another through dangerous conditions. The aliens, inspired by the humans' courage and skill, began to assist, moving debris and stabilizing smaller structures. Together, they prevented the bridge from falling, maintaining access to vital areas. As the storm passed, humans assessed the remaining damage. They coordinated with aliens to repair fractured sections, restore water flow, and reinforce unstable terrain. The aliens, once timid and hesitant, now participated confidently, applying techniques learned from the humans. A true partnership had formed, one built on trust, courage, and shared purpose. The human team then focused on restoring the energy stabilization system, a network that regulated planetary surges and reduced the frequency and intensity of storms. The system had been damaged by prior disasters, and its failure could undo much of the progress. Engineers carefully repaired the delicate components, while biologists ensured that life forms near the system remained unharmed. Aliens assisted where possible, bringing tools, knowledge, and support. Slowly, the network was restored, providing the planet with a measure of stability that had been missing for generations. With the stabilization system functioning, humans turned to long-term protection strategies. They reinforced structures with materials designed to withstand future storms. They created shelters for life forms that could endure sudden shifts. Bridges and pathways were strengthened, allowing safe passage throughout the city. Aliens, having learned from observation and participation, took an active role, using their own abilities to maintain these improvements. A turning point came when humans and aliens collaborated to secure the planet's outer regions. Previously inaccessible zones were now reachable, and both species worked together to prevent further damage. Humans demonstrated methods to reinforce terrain, while aliens offered insight into subtle environmental cues. The cooperation allowed them to stabilize areas that had been considered hopeless. Every success reinforced the bond between species, showing that survival depended on shared effort. Over time, the aliens began to express emotions they had not shown before. They celebrated small victories, expressed gratitude openly, and shared knowledge with humans. Trust and friendship developed, and a sense of community emerged. Humans, who had come as rescuers, were now partners, teachers, and allies. The aliens learned to face challenges with courage, confidence, and hope. As the final days of the mission approached, humans conducted one last sweep through the most dangerous zones. They ensured that structures were stable, life forms protected, and pathways secure. They trained the aliens to respond independently to emergencies, equipping them with knowledge, tools, and confidence. The aliens had transformed from fearful observers into capable participants, ready to maintain their world and survive future challenges. When the human team prepared to depart, the aliens gathered to express their gratitude. Their eyes, once filled with fear, now glimmered with hope and trust. The humans had not only stabilized the planet, but had instilled courage and independence. They had proven that survival was possible even in the harshest conditions. The aliens had witnessed endurance, intelligence, and empathy in action, and would carry those lessons into the future. The humans boarded their spacecraft, leaving behind a transformed world. The cities were stabilized, life forms secured, and the energy stabilization system functioning. The aliens, once fragile and fearful, now stood tall, confident in their ability to manage their environment and face challenges. The partnership had changed both species, forging a bond that extended beyond mere survival. As the spacecraft descended, the aliens waved, a gesture of thanks and farewell. Humans watched in return, proud of what had been achieved. They had come as visitors, faced unimaginable danger, and left as saviors, teachers, and allies. The planet, once on the brink of destruction, now had hope for the first time in generations. Communication with Earth resumed. Updates were broadcast, showing images of stabilized cities, restored life forms, and a species that had regained confidence. The world watched, amazed at what had been accomplished. Humans had risked everything to answer a call for help, proving that courage, empathy, and determination could overcome even the most extreme challenges. For the aliens, the memory of fear faded. They now looked forward to the future, armed with knowledge, confidence, and the experience of working alongside beings who had faced death and emerged unbroken. Humanity had earned their trust and respect, leaving behind a lasting impact that would shape generations. The mission concluded, but its legacy endured. Humans had faced danger beyond imagination, endured harsh conditions, and saved a civilization. Aliens had learned to survive, adapt, and thrive. Together, they had transformed.